What if the blueprint for our future was written down decades ago, not in some dusty ancient text, but in the meticulous research of an economist and the chilling visions of a street preacher? What if two completely separate warnings, one economic and one spiritual, are pointing to the exact same moment in time? For decades, their predictions were largely forgotten, dismissed as fringe theories or just apocalyptic fantasy. But now, as we race toward the year 2026, the patterns they described are starting to look eerily familiar. A hidden rhythm in our economy is approaching a critical point. The social fabric that holds us together seems to be tearing at the seams, and a spiritual crisis is brewing that threatens to leave millions adrift. This isn't just another doomsday prediction. This is about a convergence, a turning point that's already in motion. And the biggest question is, are you ready for what might be coming next? To understand the potential economic cliff we're approaching, we have to look at the work of a man many have never heard of, Fred Harrison. He's a British economist who, back in the 1990s, did something incredible. He accurately predicted the 2008 global financial crisis. His prediction wasn't a wild guess. It was based on a theory he's researched for decades, the 18-year real estate and land cycle. Now, let's be clear. This is not a universally accepted law in mainstream economics. In fact, many economists dispute its predictive power. But Harrison's argument, based on over 200 years of data, is that Western economies are governed by this almost clockwork pattern of boom and bust. Here's how the theory breaks down. The cycle starts with a few years of slow recovery after a crash. That's followed by about 7 years of steady growth. Then, a brief mid-cycle dip, a wobble, before the final, frenzied boom phase. The last couple of years of this boom are what Harrison calls the winner's curse, a period of wild, unsustainable speculation where fortunes are made and lost overnight. The last great global crash hit its peak around 2008. If you add 18 years to that, you land, ominously, in 2026. Harrison's model showed the cycle was proceeding as expected, with a mid-cycle dip happening right on schedule in 2019. But then, something unprecedented occurred: the global pandemic. Governments injected trillions of dollars into their economies. Harrison argues a huge chunk of that money didn't create sustainable growth. It poured into the housing market, artificially inflating the final boom and supercharging the cycle. According to his updated analysis, this intervention didn't break the cycle. It just made the final phase more dramatic. He now forecasts that the market will reach its frenzied peak in 2026, followed by a severe correction and a crisis unlike any we've faced before. So, is this just a fringe theory, or are the warning lights already flashing? You only have to glance at the global economic dashboard. First, global debt, both public and private, has soared to record-breaking levels. Nations, corporations, and families are leveraged to the hilt. While high debt is always a risk, its sheer scale today makes the entire system incredibly fragile. The concern is that even a small economic shock could trigger a cascade of defaults, making 2008 look like a minor tremor. Then there's the inflation we've all been living through. While many factors were at play, a significant driver was central banks printing trillions to paper over the cracks. This has eroded savings and pushed the cost of living to crisis levels for millions. Even mainstream financial institutions are sounding cautious. It's true that major forecasters, like the IMF and the OECD, are projecting moderate global growth for 2026, not a full-blown collapse. They see growth slowing to around 2.9 to 3.1%. However, their reports are filled with warnings about underlying fragilities, fiscal vulnerabilities, and the potential for sudden corrections in financial markets, especially with assets that have high valuations. Nowhere is this more apparent than in commercial real estate. In major cities across the globe, from San Francisco to London, we're seeing historically high office vacancy rates. Property owners are struggling to refinance debts in a high-interest rate world. These are eerie echoes of the conditions that preceded past crashes, another data point suggesting the ground beneath our feet is far from stable. But the economic argument is only half of the story. Around the same time economists were formalizing these cycle theories, a very different kind of warning emerged. In April 1973, a street preacher named David Wilkerson, known for his work with New York City gangs, claimed to have received a terrifying vision of the future. He published it in a small book called The Vision. At the time, many dismissed it as doomsday rambling. Today, reading it can feel like flipping through the nightly news. Importantly, Wilkerson never set a specific date for these events, but he described a sequence of calamities that would precede the end times. His vision included 5 major calamities. First, he saw a worldwide economic confusion, with large trusted corporations going bankrupt and economists unable to explain what was happening. Second, he saw drastic and bizarre weather changes and powerful earthquakes, events he described as being beyond normal patterns, almost supernatural in their intensity. Third, he foresaw a flood of filth, a period of unprecedented moral decay where things once considered shameful would be openly celebrated and pushed on society. Fourth, he saw a growing rebellion among youth and a deep-seated hatred toward parents. And finally, he prophesied a coming persecution madness. He warned that committed Christians would face intense ridicule, censorship, and pressure to conform, not just from the culture, but from a compromised church more concerned with popularity than truth. Decades later, Wilkerson's vision seems to be mapping onto our current reality in some startling ways. The economic confusion he described is a daily reality for millions. But it's the societal and spiritual decay that is perhaps the most chilling. Trust, the very glue of civilization, has seemingly evaporated. For years, polls on confidence in major United States institutions have been hovering at near-record lows. Globally, the annual Edelman Trust Barometer paints a similar picture, revealing a cycle of deep distrust and a widespread feeling that our leaders and systems are failing us. A huge portion of the population feels the system is fundamentally unfair. This collapse of trust is creating a spiritual vacuum. We're living in an era of historically high rates of anxiety and depression, especially among young people. While the causes are complex, it points to a profound lack of meaning and hope. Millions are drowning in a sea of digital noise, desperately searching for something real in a world that feels increasingly fake. This is the spiritual crisis Wilkerson seemed to foresee. And his warning about persecution? While it's a controversial topic, many conservative Christians feel they are increasingly at odds with corporate policies, social media guidelines, and government mandates. They describe a sense of being systematically squeezed out of the public square for holding traditional beliefs. This mirrors Wilkerson's prophecy of a time when being a Jesus person would no longer be popular. So how could a potential collapse be managed? How could a chaotic society be brought back in line? The prophecies of the past could never have envisioned the tools we have today. This brings us to technology. Governments around the world, representing over 95% of global GDP, are currently exploring central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. On the surface, they're pitched as an efficient, modern upgrade to our financial system. But critics warn they could be a Trojan horse for unprecedented control. Unlike cash or even your current bank app, a CBDC is a direct liability of the central bank. This creates a system where every single transaction could, in theory, be monitored. The risk, highlighted by privacy advocates, is the potential for behavioral control. Imagine a world where your money is programmable, where an authority could decide if, where, and on what you're allowed to spend. Now, major central banks, like the Bank of England and the European Central Bank, have publicly stated that protecting privacy is a core objective. They've committed that any digital currency would have safeguards and that they would not have access to or control over individual spending. But the technology itself creates the potential for such a system. It builds the cage, even if the door is initially left open. We already see a rough version of this with China's social credit system. It's crucial to get this right. Its reach is often exaggerated. It is not a single, unified national score for every citizen. It's a fragmented collection of blacklists and local pilot programs, primarily focused on financial and business compliance, not tracking every personal habit. Still, we also see a rise in the West of de-banking, where individuals or organizations have their bank accounts closed, sometimes with little explanation, in cases often linked to their political views. These set a chilling precedent for a future where financial access could become a political weapon. So we have an economic theory pointing to a 2026 peak and crash. We have a spiritual prophecy from 50 years ago describing social conditions that feel incredibly current. And we have the rapid development of technology that could be used to manage any ensuing chaos. None of these things on their own would be quite as significant. But taken together, they paint a fascinating picture. Multiple, independent streams of data and prophecy, all seeming to point toward the same narrow window of time. And here's where the story gets even stranger. Popular culture and internet folklore have also latched onto this date. Mystics like Baba Vanga, a blind Bulgarian woman who died in 1996, are now credited online with pointing to 2026 as a year of great upheaval, war, and disasters. But let's be intellectually honest. There is no robust, verifiable, primary source documentation for these specific claims about Baba Vanga and 2026. Most of what you read online is a mix of unverified attributions and modern internet myths, recycled every year with new dates. It's folklore, not fact. But the fact that this folklore also centers on 2026 is, in itself, an interesting part of the puzzle. It shows a collective anxiety, a subconscious feeling that we're approaching some kind of precipice. So forget the unreliable mystics. The convergence of Harrison's very real economic cycle theory and Wilkerson's eerily resonant spiritual vision is more than enough to make you pause. It's like two different clocks, built in different centuries by different makers, are suddenly set to chime at the same hour. When a system breaks, it must be replaced. The problem-reaction-solution framework is the oldest play in the Book of Power. Allow or create a crisis, then present your pre-packaged solution to a desperate public. In the face of the kind of chaos we've been discussing, one proposed path forward is often called a Great Reset. This is a rhetorical frame for a move towards more centralized governance, stakeholder capitalism, and perhaps those very CBDC systems we just discussed. A top-down restructuring of society to manage the masses and ensure stability, possibly at the cost of individual liberty. But there is another possibility, a great awakening. This isn't a top-down reset, but a bottom-up renewal. History shows that periods of immense pressure and disillusionment are often the fertile ground for profound spiritual revival. When people lose faith in governments, in institutions, and in money, they're forced to ask deeper questions. What's real? What's true? What can I build my life on that can't be shaken? This is the ultimate fork in the road. Will the coming pressure push humanity into a more sophisticated system of control, or will it trigger a desperate, genuine search for something more? This is the ideological battle that looms behind the headlines, a battle for the very soul of humanity. The world probably won't end in 2026, but it may be the year the world we knew ends. The engine of our global system seems to be sputtering, and things may never be quite the same again. The purpose of this isn't to spread fear, but to offer a new lens to see the world through. The solution isn't to stick your head in the sand. It's to become intellectually and spiritually resilient. To build your life on a foundation that can't be swept away by the coming storm. The signs are no longer on the horizon. They are here. Harrison's economic cycle is nearing its theoretical peak. The social decay Wilkerson described feels more real every day. The spiritual vacuum is widening, and 2026 is waiting. The question for all of us is this: when the system finally breaks, what will you have left? What will you be standing on? If this message resonated with you, and if you feel the urgency of this moment, let's make this conversation just the beginning. Subscribe for more analysis as we continue to track these converging timelines, and share your thoughts in the comments. What signs are you seeing in the world today? This isn't a time for fear, it's a time to wake up.
This book is your beginner's guide to understanding Scripture. Find peace, build relationships, and discover purpose in today's world. Ready to decode the Bible? Find Bible Decoded available on Amazon now.
If this content blesses you and you'd like to support our mission, you can buy me a coffee or give a super thanks. Every contribution helps us create more content to inspire and uplift others. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos.
Templar.